And we're recording, Chair.
Good morning, members, officers, members of the public who view this. This Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021 and will operate alongside the Council Standing Orders. The Council Standing Orders and Codes of Conduct will apply at all times and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Please, for those attending online, switch off your cameras and mute your microphones while you're not speaking to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise. Can I also remind members to ensure that their chat function is switched on and to use the facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. The recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting, whilst translations of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the council. Samantha, would you?
For apologies, Chair, we've got two apologies, one from Councillor Bright and one from Councillor Adams.
And could we wish Councillor Adams a speedy recovery? Declarations of interest, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, can I just say sorry for being late?
Declarations of interest. Yeah, my daughter's a social worker.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Minutes of the previous meetings, then, please. Are there any points of accuracy on the minutes? No. Then points of action. On page 4, the strategic director agreed that a review of the previous SAMP could be provided to the committee, and I believe that's been done.
Yes, this week, Chair.
Thank you. And then the next one is the consultation report that we decided not to take last month due to its late provision. And we need to find out what's actually happened to that consultation report. I think it was with Miss McHale.
That's fine, Chair. I can speak to Tracy about that. That's not.
Okay, because obviously there was quite a lot of work went into it, and it'd be a pity if nothing happened with it. There's no comments on that. Can we move on to agenda item 4, annual corporate safeguarding report? Now, we've had a safeguard report in the last couple of months, but this was just to catch up on previous work that the council was outstanding on. Could I remind you, this is probably one of the most important reports that come to us over the year, because we're dealing with vulnerable children and vulnerable adults. Samantha, are you going to?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I'm hoping that members will have a chance to read the report. It's quite a far-reaching report, and we've kind of evolved it this year to look at a real cross-cutting part of the council and how we all sort of have a duty to and responsibility to accept and acknowledge where safeguarding is an issue for not just colleagues but citizens as well. So we hopefully it's sort of demonstrated within it that there's emphasis as always on social care function and there's tables of referral rates and demand demonstrated, but also how we've kind of worked with other parts of the authority to really embed what is safeguarding and what do people need to do when they have an issue. We've got kind of quite involved in lots of other areas such as housing and working with connected communities, and really kind of digging deep into a join up around what that looks like and how we can best represent and protect citizens and colleagues. We've got a real join up with things like White Ribbon and the Bowder RSV work, so working around the links between domestic abuse and safeguarding. And we've done a lot of work collectively, not just within the council, but also external and regionally with colleagues to make sure that we're all sort of doing the same thing, particularly around that benchmarking and understanding what demand is, and also the differences, because we're the only city obviously in the Gwener area, so we have slightly different kind of representation to other areas. So notwithstanding, we are kind of mindful of that, and we represent ourselves accordingly in terms of the demand and how we best meet that. So I think I'm hoping that members will see that there's been an awful lot of work going on. I know there are some issues around training and how that's reported, and that's very much a focus for moving forward in terms of how we simplify that and make that more accessible and more easy to represent when we do need to look at mandatory training compliance rates. Also within the report, we've got some conversations around some future plans and how we want to improve and strive to continue to further develop parts of the work. But it's my view as head of corporate safeguarding, it's been a really productive year. We're got lots of things to sort of think about for the future, and lots of things that we want to work collectively further on to make sure that we are all very clear on what responsibilities are.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else wish to add to this report, or you've done it all?
No, I'm sorry, Mary Whitehead of adults. I suppose what Finn's done now is expanded, and she's got a really good feel and balance of what we need to be doing internally moving forward, as well as having a wider perspective about what's going on regionally and what will impact us as a Newport City Council, both adults and children. So some of those wider pieces of work in terms of transitional and safeguarding, whatever, are all incorporated, and that's hopefully people can see that there's that growth in the safeguarding agenda.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see that Councillor Marshall and Councillor Hughes are here this morning. They're the cabinet members responsible for social services. Do either of you want to say anything at this point?
Not at this time, Chair, but happy to come in as and when.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Thank you, Councillor. Before we go into the detail of it, members raised some questions about the scope of the report and the need for a clear view as to how social services work. Would one of you like to come in on that?
Well, it was my
thank you, Councillor Klaus.
I mean, obviously it's an enormous amount of work taking place here, and I think the point I made is that the report's very thorough. There's a lot of thought and work's gone into it, but coming at it, I must say that it was difficult to get a crystal sort of clear picture of just what's going on everywhere, because you know we've got the teams in social services, we've got the safeguarding hub, and then we've got layers of management on top of this, and then we've got regional bodies being involved as well. And for me, I think it would have made a massive difference to just have some sort of schematic diagram. So, because what I found myself doing reading the report was constantly going back to check what this was and what that was, what this acronym meant, etc. And I think to have that laid out like that, because it's quite common, isn't it, in documents to have a schematic report of that sort. And just coming at it as a councillor and not somebody steeped in social work, I would have found that very, very helpful.
I think that's a really good point, Councillor. And I funny, before you said it, I wrote it down because I could see where it was going. So I think it would be really useful for us to do that and have, because what I'm proposing in the report this year is that we have a different level of governance around this work. And I think we could embed that in the structure of the diagram to say that we have heads of service oversight twice a year. We have our corporate safeguarding champions who meet so internally, plus the external sort of stuff that goes on around it as well. So yes, I think that would be a really good idea. Thank you.
And also just to add to that, so it's internally what's happening within social services and how it's all managed would be good. But actually then there's that corporate dimension as well of safeguarding instead of its responsibility. So yeah, we can make sure that's that diagram here.
And is this going to be in next year's report, or we get one in the short term? Yeah.
Yeah, I find it really helpful to keep that as a piece of
I
reference.
think it'd be useful to have, certainly, yeah.
Councillor Davis?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to continue what Councillor Cox was saying with regards to page 18. I don't know from the one graph that's there, the bottom graph where it says at the top, for example, child and adolescent abusive behaviours 2. Now, is that 2 people have done that training? Is that 2%, or is that, does that mean something completely different? Page 18?
Yes. Yes, it's 2 people.
It's 2 people. Okay, I think what might be better then, so we don't have to, we're not bringing up the same question year on year, is if it's described a bit more so we don't need to ask the question. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. What we've been asked to do this morning is look and see how safeguarding arrangements and safeguard self-assessment findings are related to in the whole council. So with that in mind, we're looking at the broad picture, and that's what you've really been asked to comment on this morning. If you go to page 8, you will see the following structures will be presented, and that's quite detailed. So with that in mind, Councillor James.
I actually had some more questions about page 18, if that's all right, the training that's been offered. So I think we've just had clarification that those are two people, but the paragraph underneath says there was attendance by Newport employees to all courses offered. So are those 2 people who have attended child and adolescent abusive behaviours training, for example, are those 2 Newport employees? And if they are, then out of how many that were offered the training, just to help us get a better picture of how the training is going.
Yes, they will be Newport employees. I think what we do with the Asking Act is so that the first level of Asking Act is mandatory. These are additional ones that people can do. So it's a choice-based approach, as it were. So we've kind of been led by people who've got specific interest, or perhaps a case that's been relevant to this, and I've done some training accordingly. So that's kind of where it's come from.
Yeah, so then not statutory then, which is positive, but how many members of staff have been offered these courses?
It goes out to all social care staff and beyond, actually, but I mean, it goes regionally as well, but we obviously keep tabs on what goes on in Newport.
Yeah, of course. So out of all social care staff, for example, 1 social care staff member has decided to go to the Understanding Sexual Violence training in 23 to 24. Would that be a fair understanding?
I believe so, yes. I mean, I think what we have is a rub sometimes between what social care staff know already plus additional training. So it may be that somebody newly qualified, or it may be a new member of staff, because our assumption is that lots of staff know a lot about this, but maybe wanted an additional insight into it.
Yeah. And I suppose that actually that helps me understand the disparity between male victims and the training affecting children. I'm really glad to see that there is a training on male victims of domestic abuse there. But when I went through that table and I added up all of the trainings that I could see that related specifically to children, and including FGM and MARAC, still fewer employees went on those trainings than went to the male victims. I wondered, would you say that was perhaps because, obviously in children's services, they're already quite qualified and perhaps felt they didn't need the extra training maybe, or?
Yeah, very possibly, and I think that if a social worker maybe has a case where it's relevant, they may go and seek extra guidance or training on a specific issue. We have seen an interest, as you can see there, about the work around male victims, because we're seeing more of it. So it's just kind of indicative of what people are working with at the time. Notwithstanding, and as I said in the paragraph beneath it, that we've been without a training coordinator for the region for a number of months last year. So I think the push hasn't been quite as it would ordinarily be, but we are now fully staffed.
And it does also say...
Before you go on, Councillor James, whose responsibility is it to provide a regional trainer?
We do it on behalf of the regions, and Newport do. Right,
okay, so we should be recruiting.
We have recruited, it's just the member staff has got some work for a while.
Oh, right, okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor James.
So if the member hasn't started work yet, then, or officer even, then that probably answers my next question is, you know, the training will be given a priority focus, but sort of, is there any indication of what that means? What sort of trainings you're going to prioritise? I'd love to see sort of like a bit more of a future plan, I think.
So can I just say, in terms of workforce training and development, as heads of service, we all get together and we all come up with what the needs of our particular service area are for that sort of forthcoming year, and to make sure that the money that we have is allocated in the right place. So from adult services, mental capacity, dolls, things like that. But actually, male victims of domestic abuse is something that we would be picking up on as well. So all service managers and heads of service are part of pulling together what are our internal training needs now going forward, and then the plan is devised from that.
Yeah, and as I said, you know, I think you should feel proud of, you know, putting on that training. It just seemed to me odd that there were so many people go into that, and then perhaps not as many go into the ones relating to children. That's all my questions on page 18. I did have further questions, but
I'll let you come back. Let you come back and show you. Before I call in Councillor Baker Westhead, Councillor Marshall, did you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, Chair. It's, just a response in terms of the training side of things there. Just as elected members, we also have a duty and responsibility to sit training as well. Although most of us had sat training when we got elected in 2022, staff also have to renew theirs after 2 years. So I would highlight that to the committee as well, that there should be now a redoing of the safeguarding training for all elected members, just to make sure that we're up to date and we lead by example. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Right, Councillor Baker Westhead.
Good morning. Yeah, sorry, I've got more questions on training, and it's page 18 as well. It's just trying to get some clarity, really, to make sure that I've got the right end of the stick with the data that's in front of us. It's the table at the top there. I was getting a little bit confused. I'm sure this is clear to whoever's put the table together, but it's not really clear reading it. We've got a couple of different totals there, and then different percentages. And for example, on the first line of data there with the e-learning, group 1, year total 855, which I think is representative then of that year's staff percentage 14.87 as a total out of, I'm guessing, out of the total staff in the last but one column on the numbers. It's just not very clear to read as a table. Because I don't understand the difference between the year total and the live rollout total. You know, I'm just would be hoping for some more clarity when the table's produced next time to understand what those figures are. I'm guessing the year total is the year total number of staff that have taken up the e-learning opportunity, but I don't know what live rollout total means.
Can I suggest then we ask that be clarified, and maybe you can send us out an amended table as soon as is convenient. Okay, Councillor.
Yeah. And the other thing is, looking at page 17 as well, I'm just wondering if e-learning, having experienced e-learning myself in various other work areas before I became a councillor, I think e-learning sometimes isn't always the most effective, and given the fact that safeguarding is such a crucial point, you know, I do wonder whether e-learning is effective. And it's this table that we've got on page 17, where we've got total completing training in the last 2 years, the top table there. It just looks a bit peculiar seeing that the highest uptake on that graph is finance compared to adult services, children's services and education, where it's obviously more of a vital area, safeguarding. The results for the number of training sessions undertaken there are lower, and I'm wondering what that's about. I was just wondering if it might be, my assumption given my previous work environment is that it's more difficult for people that are actually out and about, front facing, which I'm guessing a lot of adult services, children's services and people education doing their day-to-day jobs. They're not going to be maybe as able to access e-learning as regularly as somebody in finance, for example, who might be sitting in front of their computer all day long. But I'm wondering if somebody could shed some light on the disparity on the figures there, please.
Certainly. I mean, what I see that as is that certainly in adults and children's services, our level of training is far above and beyond what the mandatory level of training is. So actually for social workers to sit and do something that they already know when they're time pressed is difficult because they're doing it already. So that and in education, because they have such a lot, but they have a suite of additional safeguarding training relevant to the cohort that they're working with. So it is a bit like, oh gosh, we're doing what we already know, as opposed to, so they're not learning from it necessarily. It's just a kind of, because it's mandated, they're doing it when they can.
So yeah, so it almost seems like a futile table to have as a comparison in that sense, you know, without any explanation beneath it, because it looks to anybody who's a layperson quite alarming that the figures are lower there with training. But when you've got that explanation added to it, it makes more sense. But then it's a question, I guess, of monitoring that the absolute level of training that people have got in things like adult services and children's services, to make sure that they are, because otherwise we're looking at a training section there which doesn't really capture or reflect the level of knowledge and training that people are getting within the organisation. It's not a true reflection. It looks really concerning, whereas having the explanation now, it's not. So I'm just wondering if there's any other way to quantify that, you know, with the information that comes out to us to this committee then, so that we know what the true reflection is on training for people within the organisation in those various sectors.
I think possibly Councillor Marshall and Councillor Hughes are going to try and help you with this question, Ms Waddell. So, Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing me in again, Chair, and for Councillor Baker-Westhead. It's just a few points as well about the social worker side of things there. So although they are mandated to do the training, they also do continuous professional development training. So they do CPD on a continuous basis, discuss cases, how that may be affected, and they learn from that. So it's not just about a one stage in time that they have to learn like a lot of the other areas. It's a continuous thing that they do, you know, day by day, week by week, if not hour by hour. So there is a continuous thing there to be reassured that side. I think it's just alongside how we, you know, gather that information. As you said, it may be, you know, in certain ways that we could improve on, and that would be something that we'd like to hear from yourselves about how you would like to see it, but also just to understand the context that it's not just that one simple training. It is an ongoing training all the time there. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, it was very much what Councillor Marshall was saying now. It's just a reminder. It goes back to what Councillor James was saying as well, a little, that all professional qualified social workers, obviously, they've gone through a degree to get to that social work registration, and then when they are registered, they've got to carry on that professional registration by completing training on a cycle to maintain that status. So, you know, it's exactly what Natalie was saying earlier. Really. We're in a situation where our professionally qualified staff will already be much higher in their awareness of safeguarding, and the courses that we're putting on at that level are to pick up on staff who may not have those level of qualifications. And it's, you know, going back to the male abuse training that Councillor James talked about earlier, you know, that was a particular interest, because for many social workers in that professional status, we wouldn't have had that much training on that subject. So there would have been more interest in that, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor. Before we come in, Councillor Cox, has that answered the questions that you were asked, or do you want to add anything else to it?
Can I just add, I think what the table does demonstrate, though, is the corporate safeguarding in terms of all the other areas within the council and their appetite for their attendance in terms of whether it's the band rest fee, training, or the GDPR in terms of keeping information safe. It gives us a demonstration of what we're doing there across the council and how we're making sure that that's rolled out, and that's come through sort of the areas self-assessments.
Councillor Cox, you wanted to comment on this?
Well, I've got to be very brief because I mean, I agree that as it stands, I think that table is, I accept the explanation, but as it stands, somebody might come in looking at that. I think, you know,
Even more narrative.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted a different way of doing it because my understanding again from the report is that training is going to be laid down in levels now.
Yeah.
And if, for example, that said something like the total number of staff trained up to whatever, I don't know, like level 1, that automatically then the social services, etc., would shift up to 100%, wouldn't it? Yeah. So I just wanted a different way of doing it in that kind of fashion.
Yeah, I think Councillor Baker West End wants to come back in.
Yeah, it's really just what Councillor Cox was saying. I've got a similar take on that. Looking at that table, and it might be, maybe it would be more appropriate if that table doesn't include those people that are front facing that are professionally trained. So there's a different way of showing what their level of training is, because it would be maybe more appropriate to have that table showing just the corporate personnel that have not got the background qualifications in health and social care and all of that to be shown on this table. So it gives us a really good reflection and indication of what those people that aren't professionally trained in those areas are getting as a result of the as a result of the online training, the e-learning, and just it's a slightly different point, but actually I think what Councillor Hughes has said as sort of assuaged some of my concern. I did read Appendix 6, DSP 2022, which was a sort of a poster type of a piece of information about the designated safeguarding person in organisations, the DSPs. And it was saying that the mandatory training for that was the introduction to safeguarding, which was e-learning. And I was thinking, if that's the only mandatory level of training required for somebody that's got such a significant, you know, cutting edge role really with picking up safeguarding issues, then that doesn't seem to really be adequate as a minimum for people that are DSPs. And also that beyond that, once they've taken on that role, I know they'll get support, but it really is down to them then to make sure they've got the adequate training and identify whether they need any additional support. So I'm just wondering, I'm assuming then from what's been said that anybody who is a DSP is usually within an organisational role where they've got more of a, you know, a rounded and training than just the basic e-learning with the introduction course. I'd just like some clarity on that, please.
Yeah, and there's actually there's a safeguarding champion meetings regularly and whatever in terms of across the council for them to come together to carry on having that, you know, further understanding of their role, and so that they've got a peer group across the council, so that if anything does come up, they've got safe spaces to go and talk to people. Yeah, so that, yeah, but that's not protected there, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, it might be useful in the report in future just to have a section that, you know, explains or identifies how much training that particular group have had. Then I'm just thinking of, you know, making sure that things don't fall through the cracks as well in terms of, you know, individuals being identified as needing safeguarding, just to make sure that the DS, I'm sure it is covered, but so that the report does adequately lay out what people in those positions have as training to make sure they're adequately covered for the role.
Yeah, but just to pick up on that point, Councillor, we've asked previously that reports are as concise as possible, but there's no reason that we can't have links to the sort of information you're asking for. You know, the report should be easy to read, but if somebody's really interested, they can look to these links. Councillor James, I haven't forgotten you. Yes.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure if the Speak Now box was being monitored because I had my hand up there for quite a while, and then when I put my hand up in Teams, it gave me a different number. So I just thought I'd flag that. Going back to the bar chart on page 17, where we were discussing disparities between different departments, I totally understand your explanation, but one point that perhaps hasn't been picked up on, and it is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, is that these percentages are not contextualised. I'm just wondering, for example, in terms of team size, how does children's services compare to, say, law and standards? Because looking at these percentages, it looks like more people in law and standards have completed the training than in children's services. But my guess is that actually, in terms of, you know, numbers of individuals completing the training, it's probably higher in children's services. But because we've got percentages with no context, it skews the sort of look. Would that be your understanding? What are you, I don't know if you have much of an understanding of the size of other teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can certainly add that in, like you said, the contextual element to it. But what I think will change next year, and this kind of covers some of the points that have been raised earlier, is the changes around the national training, safeguarding training framework. That's going to change with the categories A to F. That will very much kind of compartmentalise and reflect each authority, each directorate's learning pathway, and will be far more easier to kind of identify what the gaps are, what the requirements are, and how then we meet it going forward. So it will be a different picture next year. I mean, I'm in real favour of the proposed methodology that's rolled out now, because I think it will be far more aligned to CPD per individual. So if somebody says, I think I need a bit of this, then we can actually provide that and evidence it and show compliance. So I do think we've got, this is a bit of a kind of last chance at this process.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Sorry, we've lost you. Can you?
Sorry, am I?
Oh, no, we've lost. Oh, yeah, you're back again.
Oh,
right.
Sorry, did you say I was back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. And really appreciated the explanation on continuing professional development, and agrees from councillors Marshall and Hughes. There's not a great deal in this report about how that's tracked, however, and I'm thinking, you know, obviously looking at these tables, you know, caused some alarm to me, and I suspect some of the other councillors on scrutiny, and I'm just sort of wondering who else could have looked at this report and felt that initial sort of pang of alarm, and is there any chance we can get further explanation in the report before it goes out and in future reports as well?
I mean, what the report had led to in prior to coming to yourselves was a conversation across HR and other directorates to sort of say, right, how are we collating this data? What tools are we using? What platform is this being rolled out on? Because I know there's been previous concerns about accessibility to the e-learning, which has been a bit of an inhibitor. And there's been different ways that the kind of compliance rates have been calculated because of the platform technicalities. But we are in conversation, certainly I've chatted to Councillor Marshall about this and to colleagues internally about how we best reflect that. So we've got an at-a-glance kind of dashboard view of compliance, which will kind of make it far more directorate-led then, as opposed to yearly we do a trawl or whatever. So I'm hoping that the tech will help us in that regard and we can get advancements in kind of how we can report easier.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Marshall indicating he wants to speak again. Councillor Davis, are you coming in on this point?
Not particularly on page 18, no. Do you want to speak to Councillor Marshall first?
If he's got an answer, yes, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. It's just a response. Yes, myself and the officer have had a speak about this, and I think there's a few things, like if a new member of staff comes in, about how they're monitored across and things like that, before they have an email address, and there's a number of different things to look at about how we integrate the data best. It is something I've raised with my cabinet colleague Dimitri Petruni, so it is something that is on the horizon, so hopefully we can look together at improving that. So by the next time you do see reports, it should hopefully be improved, and the structure of how we collate all that data together is better. I know that some work has already been done in relation to this. It's not perfect right now, however, it is a development, and we are moving forward to trying to get, you know, a better situation, as Finn just mentioned. So thank you, and that's my notes.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that was concerning me, and I want to know how it was monitored, was Councillor Marshall picked up on it earlier, was the fact that only 26 elected members out of 51 had actually done the safeguarding training. And I just wondered if it was monitored on who has done it.
We do have that data. I think what there's a bit of a rub in this, in that I've checked with WLGA what the mandatory training requirements are for members, and it isn't safeguarding, so it has to be an organisational task. However, off the back of the corporate safeguarding good practice guidance, it is a recommendation that members do. So WLGA are changing their response to that, and the Social Care Wales have kind of joined up with that conversation and are suggesting, as I've put in the report, that all elected members do the online Group A, plus additional learning around maybe voucher SB work or some of the kind of mandatory stuff that we do in-house. So I think that we, again, with the rollout of the national training standards, will have some sort of compliance data which is more effective than it has been. I know certainly since I've been in post, I've delivered 2 lots of trainings to members. I've obviously got the details of that, but it isn't captured in the way that we would like it to be best captured.
Okay, just one other thing, and it's not a question, and I think I need to say it because there's been a lot of negativity today, which obviously, you know, can't make you feel very good. But what I wanted to say on a positive note was the fact that the age has been lifted from 18 to 25 with regard to discussions at Mace. And I thought that was brilliant, because I think at least then from 18 to 25, there can be a tapering off, whereas it's not just a case of, right, you're 18 now, go away, to use that extra 7 years to taper off, so their, their needs of you become less and less as those 7 years go on. So that's brilliant, thank you, well done.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Marshall, are you coming in for a point of clarity again, or is it legacy at hand?
Thank you, Chair. It's just to address the point about elected members again. So obviously we did have the number stipulated there that's undertaken. It was 2 years ago in person. However, the issue is, as members are aware, you can attend afterwards, so you can re-watch what was happening. So we don't actually have a capture of who watched it afterwards potentially. But in part of that, in moving forward, obviously, as mentioned earlier, everyone would be coming up to renewal in point now. So I think it's imperative now, as all elected members, all of us, start looking at doing the online training and that, and getting ahead of the game. So just to make sure that we're adhering to that, and hopefully looking at ways that we can improve, so, you know, for all elected members to be able to undertake that, and any issues and things like that there need to be addressed, because I know there's been issues in the past. So just to make sure that we can support elected members, to make sure that, as said, we lead by example and we get on top of the game with this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Baker-Westhead, are you indicating you want to come in again?
Yes, please.
Yeah, please carry on.
Sorry, I'm not quite sure what's going on. I don't know if you can see me.
We can't see you. We can see some lovely daffodils. No, we can.
That's better. Sorry. Yeah, I'd like to just go on a positive as well. I had exactly the same point as Councillor Davis did in terms of the transitional safeguarding. I think it's absolutely crucial that people are supported beyond the age of 18, and it is wonderful to see that work is being done now to support them between the ages of 18 to 25, because I think a lot of the time, from a previous role I had, I could see that a lot of the time people have issues leading up to that that sort of 18 sort of threshold, but then they're just left to flounder afterwards, or they have been in the past. And really, even though they're sort of like technically an adult at 18, for a lot of those people, if they haven't had the right backgrounds and the right support leading up to that age, then that transitional period between 18 to 25 is a vital sort of part of their formative years as well, where they need the real support to move into full adulthood. So I think it's absolutely wonderful to see that there are big steps being made towards supporting that group, and I'd like to commend that work as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we've bogged going rather a lot on data now, but there's a whole raft of more holistic things within this report that we should really be concentrating on now. But Councillor Cox.
Yeah. Well, mine's on the sort of vaguely related to data, but it's not focusing on the particular issues we've just been talking about. It's on page 28. There's if I can just go to page. It's sorry, apologies, I just find right. It's on the looking at the standards on standard 2. It talks about how safe does your service area feel to citizens that access your services and to the staff working in the area. But what I couldn't see there was how people using the service area actually being involved. The comments that are in the report are helpful, and obviously that is important they were there, but that they seem all to emanate from the staff rather than from the clients and the users who are coming in there, which is what the standard, at least part of the standard, relates to. So I suppose my question is, to come to the point, is to what extent are users and clients involved in evaluating the safeguarding processes?
I think it's mixed across the directorate, across the local authority, if I'm honest. I mean, certainly in social care, we're quite good at it because it's what we're told to do and it's important for our practice development. So, for example, within child protection meetings, we're now working with parents to ask them how they felt the experience went. And that's a pretty sensitive area to kind of, it's obviously a tough time, but we're doing it after the meeting, and we've got a outside agency coming in to ask some pertinent questions. Where I think, because it's cross authority, I think we've got a mixed picture in how it looks. And just to say that the data that we've got in relation to the self-assessments is huge. So within it, I had to pull out some pertinent points. So apologies for omitting that particular bit, or not kind of emphasising that particular area. We do have an awful lot of data, and one of the actions for myself and another officer is to now go through and really fine tune some of those findings and then go back to areas and improve. So we'll certainly take that and make sure that that's more reflected in the future. I can't speak for lots of areas in terms of how public facing they are, what public feel about their experiences, because it is such a wide area to kind of manage. But I certainly, for my own area in social care, I know that we are minded of it and we do report on it routinely.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Hello, thank you. I actually, before I start, I want to echo Councillor Davis and Baker Westhead's comments on the transitional safeguarding. In another local authority, at that age, I was a service user and actually felt the very real effects of the cliff edge. As soon as I turned 18, it was like, right, that's it, you're on your own. And I struggled for years as a result of that. So I'm really, really glad to see this. I was actually initially going to ask about the rough sleeper task force, but since we're on page 28 anyway, I might change my question. Again, about how safe staff feel working in the service area. And I appreciate it's another data point, but I would have loved to see some data points on that so we can get an actual picture rather than, because this seems to me like we've got a few choice quotes. Perhaps we could see more, like obviously there's been some sort of consultation. Could we have had a report on that? And things like violence at work forms, how many of those have been filled in? How have we checked in with those people after those forms have been filled in? How safe do they feel when they've had that experience? And, you know, and obviously if those fall outside of the scope of the report, then please say, but I just think more work could have been done there or evidenced there to show that you're speaking to staff and, you know, really trying to make sure you're rooting out any concerns.
Thank you. I think what the data and all of the stuff that's come through those standards comes as a result of these health assessment forms that we asked directors to do. So it's there, the quotes are from them, from that document. What I've had to kind of really look at was being clear about what's safeguarding, what's violence at work, what's health and safety. So I didn't want to straddle too far into those other domains. Notwithstanding there is a crossover, I absolutely accept that. But we had such a lot of data, and I was just trying to kind of keep it tidy and brief if possible. So the data is in there, as I said previously to Councillor Cox, and our job is now to unpick some of that and spend a bit of time with directors looking at how we improve what they're asking us to help them with, but also is the form that they fill in the self-assessment, is that fit for purpose? Do we need to kind of look at that and evolve that to represent some of those other cross-cutting areas? So again, work in progress.
And,
that's brilliant.
I understand that the greatest number of violence at work incidents happen within the education system anyway, unfortunately. So, but again, I would remind members that we have asked for concise reports. And again, if we need links, we need links, but it shouldn't take away from the report.
I'd absolutely be happy to see links.
Is anybody else indicating they want to?
I can indicate again for rough sleepers if nobody else.
Yeah. Just for your information, the Strategic Equality Group discussed this week, just gone on Tuesday, I think. So there's an awful lot of work ongoing on that, and there is new legislation going through Parliament, which isn't reflected in our work at the moment. But it's certainly a hot topic within Newport. Your question, please.
I was just wondering, and perhaps this can be a request for further information rather than something we have now, but it's like a paragraph on the aims and impacts of the group, and I would like to see more information personally, particularly with, you know, how severe the problem sometimes feels at the moment.
Please try and answer it.
Okay, thank you. I mean, what I was trying to evidence in that was the crossover between some of the other works going on in the local authority, particularly within housing communities. What my interface with it from a safeguarding perspective is to really identify and understand that cohort and their vulnerability, which is, you know, goes without saying, but really shine a safeguarding light on that in connection with the other kind of interventions that are needed to, you know, put roof over people's heads, to provide support, provide relevance of what kind of care and support they may or may not have. So I think I'm a kind of additional link to that whole picture, but a new link, and that's what I wanted to reflect in the report.
And can I sort of assure you that in terms of the rough sleeping, so we make sure that we've got adult representation there as well, and that's obviously, you know, this is an area that's led by our housing and communities, but actually we're very much part of it. So I think Finn was trying to put reference to it in terms of that other sort of wider council safeguarding partnership work that's going on, and it is hard because we're aware that will be represented in other scrutinies and other council areas. But yeah, in terms of having those links, we could probably do that. But otherwise, we're all going to be talking. We're all going to be presenting similar information at many scrutiny. So we're trying to be succinct with it, but to let you know there are these big links going on. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm advised that we're rather straying into place at the moment, but let me assure you that the Housing Directorate is having a look at their structures at the moment to see how they better deal with the items or the issues that you've raised. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question with regarding safeguarding with taxis. I know taxis are used a lot for taking children back and forth school, and I wondered whether there was any what safeguarding issues were done on taxi drivers prior to taking the children to school.
I think we'll need to refer that one to licensing.
Okay, thank you.
Can that be an action? Can we do that?
I can ask the question.
Yeah, okay, but
Can I just reassure you though that there has been historically regular safeguarding training put on for the taxi drivers and escorts as well, and when they've had to come into civic. But yeah, we need to probably pick that up with passenger transport to see that has continued.
Thank you. I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Right. Can I maybe prompt you to open up the debate or open up the scrutiny a little bit? Let's go back to page 16, 2.6. And I think this was probably a very important thing. Consideration to be given as to whether whistleblowing as mandatory training should also be recorded. Okay, so you're aware of the issues of whistleblowing at a national level, or UK national level, and we've been asked to consider how whistleblowing should be dealt with in this council. Does anyone have any comments on that one? No. In fact,
sorry, Chair, I did.
No, I'm not asking anybody, but if they
ask me our opinion, should they be training? I think they should, shouldn't they? Yes, because
yeah.
Apologies, I know I'm not in the meeting, but just that it is a whistleblowing policy. It is mandatory training. The question has been asked: did the results of that training be recorded in this report? It's not about your decision about policy. That policy has already been taken. Decision has been taken.
Okay, thank you.
I think that would be very useful information to have, Chair.
Yes. Should we maybe look at the increase in the demand for social services, and particularly horrific graph on page? Sorry, Councillor Cox. And where it shows the adult safeguarding referrals and the children's services new referrals. You know, it's gone up from nearly 9,000 in 1920 to 12,500 in 23-24, and this must be putting tremendous strain on the resources that are available. No.
I mean, I made a note about that. I just would be interested in a comment on, you know, what's happening there, what the factors there, what's taking place. Is it that there's a greater number of cases, or sorry, is it sorry, the point I'm trying to make is that often in graphs like this, they don't reflect the fact that there are more people requiring support. Quite often it's that there's been some procedural factor that's resulting in more reporting, you know. So I just wondered what is the case here.
I think it's a mixture of a number of things. One is, if we're telling everybody safeguard is their responsibility, there will be more reporting coming in as a result of that. So the message is working, as it were, and people are doing more in terms of doing that. But also, we're in a pretty dire state economically at the minute, and people are struggling. So there is a real issue around people and their how they're coping, how they're parenting, etc., how they're managing with their day-to-day life, and off the back of, you know, when you hear reports in the news about tragedies or scandals or whatever, that again feeds the machine also. So I think there's sort of different reasons why the referral rate's continuing. And I mean, it can be seen, as I say, as a kind of a sign that the message is out there and working. And that's certainly how I'm interpreting it, with the knowing that. So the referrals come in doesn't mean that we work with all of those people. It means that we look at each referral and decide on its merit in terms of what the needs are, how we best press on with it. It doesn't mean that those people will all meet statutory function. It may mean that some step down into prevention and inclusion, so that there's a kind of lower tier support going in, but at least people are coming into us and we're looking at it. But it is a resource demand. I absolutely agree, but I think it's reflective of some of the work that's going on around identifying the need.
Like I said, there is, I'm sure Dinas was here, there is a pressure, and there has been very real pressure on children's services for the amount of referrals that are coming through, because every referral needs somebody to look at it, to investigate it, to find out what would be the best action. But actually what we do know internally is our child protection register for children and families that we are very concerned about. Those numbers are going down, so we're working much better with families at a preventative level, such as statutory footing, but it's still at preventative level. Yeah. So that is all going on. So there's really good work. So this is the initial referrals that come in, but actually further on there's other ways of managing this.
Miss Poyner, did you want to come in? Your hand was up on stage.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was prior to Finn responding to councillor's question, but yeah, absolutely, we've seen a significant increase in terms of the level of trauma that children are experiencing now, in terms of mental health, in terms of domestic abuse, neglect, cost of living. We, as Mary did highlight, we have put in a pressure and undertook a restructure within our front door in order to assist us in meeting the demand. And in addition to that, we are utilising as many resources as we possibly can within the community, hence why we're now able to demonstrate a reduction in number of children on the child protection register. Our children looked after population has also significantly decreased, and that is because of, I suppose, robust intervention when children are coming to us through the front door. And also, I suppose it's a change in culture in terms of ensuring that children are reunified. God, get your words out, Natalie. Once they're in our care, it's about ensuring that they're reunified with their with their birth families where safely possible.
Thank you very much for your intervention. And Ms Jenkins, the Strategic Director, has indicated she'd like to speak on this one as well, please.
Natalie picked up a couple of the points that I was going to make, in terms of that we have, particularly in children's, looked at the safeguarding hub and looked at a restructure with the assistance of additional funding that came through from the pressures in order to address the challenge. I agree with Finn, but I also think that it is probably inevitable, given the pandemic, given the cost of living issues. It would be surprising if we weren't seeing an increase in referrals for both children and adults in terms of the pressures that families experience. We're not alone. This is a common picture across England and Wales. So what we see across all Welsh local authorities and indeed English authorities is a similar pattern. I think where we are different is that because of the profile of our population, we have an increasing population for under 25s. We have an increasing older population, so our actual numbers go up as well as our percentage. So that is really challenging in terms of capacity and resource for both children and adult services. So it's a national trend, national issues. We are looking at how we address it, but I wouldn't want to underestimate how much stress, perhaps strain it's placing in terms of how it impacts on the workforce. I suppose one positive, Natalie picked up on the really positive work in terms of the numbers on child protection register and the numbers of children who are looked after. And yesterday, our Bernardo strategic partnership, so we are working on our Educare services in particular, won a Social Care Accolade Award. So that's a partnership award for Newport City Council and Bernardo's, and that's a real reflection of that intervention with families to manage reunification. I thought we were trying to So yeah, but it is hard.
As you've raised bananas, would you like to explain the relationship between the council and bananas?
Yeah, just very briefly then. So we have now 12-year Bernardo relationship with Bernardo Strategic Partnership, where we work with them. So of course, council staff and Bernardo staff with funding from both. The bigger funder is ourselves. Bernardo's puts in a smaller amount to really look at how we can support families on the edge of care. So it's really looking at families where we can offer interventions that support them to ensure that they can remain together safely and in a way that's positive for the children and for the wider family. And through that partnership, we've developed a series of innovative practice models over the past 10, 12 years now. But they work alongside our social workers to deliver those interventions for families. So rapid response, baby and me, and then just intensive family support.
Thank you very much. Move us on to adult safeguarding referrals now. And again, it's going up quite significantly, and I'm sure a lot of the answer we just had will be reflected in where the numbers have come from. But if there's anything else we need to know in that area? No? Okay.
Sorry, Chair, if I could just
yeah, please.
There has been a marked increase on the adult safeguarding referrals, but I did notice that they seem to be much steadier than the children's referrals year on year. So I was wondering if you had any insight as to why that might be.
No insight. I suppose the majority of the adults that we work, vulnerable adults that we work with, who have got care and support needs, there's a lot more eyes on them in terms of, so we have, in terms of the number, there's a much bigger cohort. There's like over 2,000 people that we're actually actively supporting every day in Newport. So if you look at the adult referral source, whereas it's the police for children, actually the biggest provider for referrals for adults are providers, and they're all our commission services that we have going in and out of people's houses that may be picking up issues from financial abuse to other things that may be going on and are referring into it. So there's a different referral pattern with adults to children, which is significant.
Okay, thank you. I understand now.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Councillor Cox? Yeah.
It follows on actually from the comment the director made. I was going to say this anyway, but I was interested that you touched on the area. That I was quite surprised at the end of this to see that on the final page that there are just find it so I don't misquote it. I think it's the very last comment. I've got it. It's on page 31. It said there are no resource implications currently other than corporate safeguarding being a part of everyone's role. It's been managed without a budget. Now, to be quite frank, we're talking about a massive increase in, well, massive, a significant, yeah, I'm going to be dramatic, increase in safeguarding referrals. It all relates to safeguarding. That we're seeing a whole lot of new responsibilities emerging to look for safeguarding particular areas that maybe weren't looked at before. There are new structures being set up where groups of people are going to be coming together periodically to actually review where things are in terms of safeguarding. Now, how that cannot possibly be done with no implication for people's time. So if that is the case, that either people are doing a lot more than they did before, or they're not doing some things they did before. I mean, that seems to me the only way you can have the zero cost. And I accept that this probably means that we're not going to have to take any more staff on. But I do honestly think that is really very, very misleading in lots of respects, in terms of me as a councillor understanding the pressures that are on staff here, which I think should be a key responsibility for the likes of me. the extent to which adequate resources are being devoted to the procedure that is talked about. All those, it seems to me, are really not brought to the forth when you just say, well, because we're not taking anybody else on, well, that's okay. I mean, I've had a lot of experience in public service, and my experience always was that there are lots and lots and lots of good ideas and good things that you can take on, and individually they all look really good, but when you put them all together, it inevitably means that there's a lot of demand on people's time. I find it hard to see that's not the case yet.
Ms Jenkins is going to answer on that.
I suppose that in relation to the comment on report, it's very specifically the resources of the corporate safeguarding team. So it's the delivery of the training, those elements. I'm not going to get into a discussion about the pressures on the services themselves, because that's where the resource issues are. So hence why additional resources gone into children's services to look at the issues in terms of the safeguarding help. So there is an impact on capacity in terms of all these numbers. Of course there is, but it does fall to the services rather than the corporate safeguarding team. We probably just need to think about that in terms of how we reflect that within the report, because it's two slightly different things, but it is different. Absolutely, the increase in adult safeguarding referrals, the increase in children's services referrals doesn't come without staff needing to do more within the time that they've got and the resources they've got, but that's different to the corporate safeguarding team.
Oh, I accept that point, and I suspected something like that was going to be said, but if we're looking at okay, if the report isn't being narrow in that sense, I think we've been helped to maybe flag that up. But reading the report, I think, certainly reading it, that you get the feel that what we're looking at this meeting today is the whole sort of safeguarding procedures taking into place across the authority, because different areas are referred to constantly. And I think that I would find it helpful to have those kind of implications flagged up.
And to reflect that in from adult services, so we've sort of had to look at our structures and try to be as smart as we can over the last sort of 18 months. So we've had a bit of a redesign about how the flow of referrals come in to make sure that there is no waste and that there is no double no double accounting and things like that in terms of the processes that we've got in place. We're trying to be as smart with that all the time because of those pressures.
Well, can I ask the finally, Chair? I'm not coming to topic fine.
No, you've been
well, if those pressures not reflected in this report, where would they be reflected in terms of report that's given for scrutiny?
So they are reflected in, for example, the budget report. So they're reflected in those types of reports and in the service report. So in the video report and the end of year report for the services. So they will be reflected in those reports.
And normally at this point, I ask Ms Jenkins, what's the staff turnover like in services? So, to be consistent.
I'm going to be consistent. Staff turnover in social services as a whole is pretty good. I'm going to be really cautious here, but we do have vacancies. We have vacancies in children's services, adult services, and prevention and inclusion. But our use of agency staff in the main social work roles is very, very low indeed. We've managed to bring down any use of agency in both adults and children to negligible levels. We've still got a use in residential care, which is quite different, but looking at that differently. We've recently presented a report on recruitment and retention to People Scrutiny, which I'm sure members could take a look at, and that covers in some detail the position of recruitment and retention across social services.
Thank you. Right, does anybody
in terms of, we have had some social workers who have left the authority in the last couple of years and have come back to us. So I think they've gone for other, other reasons for other councils, but they've come back. So that I think that says something about the quality of the support. And it's not just about money, is it? It's about the support and the structure you're working within. So that's a positive.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to bit of a positive note here and say thank you to all of you for the hard work that's gone into the report that you presented today. But not only that, to be able to go back to your your staff and say what a brilliant job they're doing under extremely hard circumstances. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. We'd all like to echo that. Thank you very much.
We'll make sure that comes through.
Thank you. So there we are. Nobody else is indicating they want to raise any other points in the report. So the committee is asked to consider the annual corporate safeguarding executive summary report to scrutinise and review the process of key priority work plans for both corporate safeguarding arrangements and the safeguarding self-assessment findings for the whole council. Are we content with the report, other than the points that have been raised previously, which were mostly of clarification? Councillor Horton says yes. Councillor Davis says yes. Councillor James says yes. Councillor Cox says yes. Councillor Baker Westhead.
Sorry, I'm
yes,
having trouble with my button.
And it's smiling, so that's good. And I'm more than content. So we'll discuss now the comments that we want to make to accompany the report. Now we've changed the format slightly, that officers now stay in case we raise something inadvertently that we haven't previously raised.
You happy for me to go through what I've got, Chair?
Please.
So the first point was that members asked for the diagram to be added about the safeguarding structure. Clarification on both of the tables on page 18. And
sorry. Councillor Hughes, you're flashing at us. No? Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
So the copies of the diagram and the updated top table to be circulated to members. Members asked for separate corporately trained staff with professionally trained staff with the high level of training and safeguarding and continual professional development / training to be included in the report. For a section to identify training for DSPs and future reports, Councillor James asked for percentages to be contextualised, just so there's more understanding of what that means. Committee wanted the whistleblowing training data to be included in future reports. To specify that the resource information refers to the safeguarding team, and for work to be evidenced in standard 2. Have I missed anything? Is there anything any members want to add?
Okay. Councillor James, you are happy. You're not wanting to raise anything?
Yep. Content with the list.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Right, thank you all for attending this morning. I'm going to move on to the supervisor's report now.
Yeah, the chair will just jump straight in. So you can see that the action sheet for the committee meeting this minute is clear. We've started on the sheet. I've got notes to get an update on the consultation report and if any work has been taken on that, and I'll forward that to the head of people policy transformation. I'll share the recruitment and retention report that people received in March with committee as well. But apart from that, that's all about actions. You'll note that there's no forward work programme added just because we are at our last meeting of this municipal year. The draft forward work programme for 24-25 will be presented at the first meeting of overview after AGM. And that's all from me, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, that's a very positive note to end the year on, that there are no outstanding actions.
Just a few to take forward.
Thank you all very much for your attendance this morning. Would you like to close this down, please, Tim?